Hello, techies. Welcome to the Tech Ties Africa podcast, where we'll bring you the latest stories on tech and startups in Africa. Catch us every Thursday at 10 a.m. WAT on techtiesafrica.podbean.com. Let us know what you think by giving us feedback in the comments or on our socials. Now, on with the show. Hello, and welcome to the Tech Ties Africa podcast. For those that are new, welcome. For those that are coming back, welcome back. I'm Kelvin, your host from Nigeria. This week I'm feeling better. I think last week I was very much under the weather, but I'm feeling a lot better this week. How are you doing, Kari?
Yeah, we're really happy to hear that you're doing better this week, Kelvin. I'm doing great. I'm feeling very rested, very ready for this week's podcast. I think we have some really cool topics to talk about, a lot of trends that we have been seeing repeating themselves. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward even more because we have a you that's feeling good this week. Yeah.
Yeah, the show must go on. And yeah, I see a number of very interesting developments from VAT monitoring, I think some people call it VAT, to Ghana making moves to license crypto exchanges and electronic vehicles. So let's get into the topics of this week, starting with FIRS. So FIRS is the Nigeria's Federal Inland Revenue Service. So they basically do taxes and things related to taxes. They want banks and fintechs to share transaction data so they can monitor VAT, which is value added tax. And they have created this platform that they want fintechs to register on to essentially be able to track how people are spending money and trying to find out where value added tax is short, because a lot of transactions are now being done on digital spaces. So they want to also start to add some value added taxes there. This is a move that they are making, and I'm very curious if Kenya has something similar or any other country in Africa. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this development, Karen?
So this is something that we have seen the Kenyan government trying to implement. Now, from the banking side, this is something that's already happening from traditional banking point of view. But when it comes to fintechs, this is something that they are still trying to get to. And we have actually seen a lot of backlash from the Kenyan people with regard to this move that the Kenyan government is trying to make, because they were trying to put in the software to track people's transactions on M-Pesa, which is the biggest fintech in Kenya. It's something that almost every Kenyan uses every single day. And it brought a lot of issues with the Kenyan people, mainly because of data privacy. People felt that now this was becoming too much visibility for the government into people's private issues. Obviously, there's also the truth that a lot of people don't want to pay more taxes than they already have. And I think that's a problem with being in an African nation where you're already heavily overtaxed. 30% of your salary is being taken by the government. In Kenya right now, we are almost at 40%, and yet you're not able to see any developments that are happening in the country. So I think it's a good move because we do need transparency into ensuring that everybody is paying taxes as they should. However, I do not think that we are ready as a continent because number one, our governments are yet to show us transparency in the manner that they are utilizing our taxes. We're yet to see where our taxes are going, and yet we are being so heavily overtaxed. And so I think that won't sit right with the citizens. If a government is able to showcase this is where your tax dollars are going, these are all the benefits you are gaining from being a citizen of this country, from paying your taxes as a citizen of this country, then I believe we would see a lot less resistance coming from citizens when governments try to find ways to bring in transparency and visibility of what we're doing with our finances. However, if a government is not able to do that, then you can expect a lot of backlash from your people. Number two, I do think that there needs to be very clear guidelines on data privacy when governments are making such moves. How are you ensuring that as a people, we are protected. Our data and our privacy is respected. I think on that note, we need the judiciary to come in and give advisory services to ensure that its people are protected. There's also the issue of how tech ready are we, right? How tech ready is Nigeria? How tech ready are its smaller players? Because while you have large fintechs, you also have very small fintechs. Are they able to support this kind of regulations? And what does it mean when it comes to the innovations with fintech startup owners? And what does it mean for fintech startup owners when they're setting up? What are some things that they have to think about in order to ensure that they comply to these kinds of regulations? So, do I think it's a good regulation? To some extent, yes. Do I think as a continent we're ready at the moment? Not at all.
Yeah, you've made a lot of solid points there. I think I'll add just two to those. The first one is technology. So it's like you said, there are a lot of big fintech players, but there are also small fintech players. And the portal that the FIRS has created for fintechs to register on would require you to connect to their API. And then for each transaction that happens through your platform, you send the transaction details to the FIRS through the API. For bigger fintechs, yes, they have larger teams and they can do this very quickly. The cost as well for doing this may not be so much for them. But for smaller players, this can be challenging because maybe they don't have dedicated teams for things like this. So they have to get a team. Then they have to think about how they integrate with the API and sort out their transaction details. So yeah, that can be a hassle. The other thing is for taxes themselves. In Nigeria, there are a lot of things that the taxes are meant to be used for. But then you look around you, even something as basic as light in 2025 is not constant. It isn't even predictable. You don't have many good roads, insecurity. There are just a lot of issues. And then they're already collecting taxes. And so you wonder, what are the taxes used for? Even with the budgets that they make for each year, you try to see what these projects that they say they will do, are they actually doing it at the end of the year? Half the time they are not. So it's kind of hard to convince the people that this is going to be for their own good, even though you want, in quotes, to help them. Because for them, it's like, okay, you say tax collection is not enough at the moment. The revenue they are generating from taxes are not enough. Or show us what you have done with what you have collected. And there isn't much to show in that regard. So yeah, there are just a lot of issues that you have when it comes to the conversation of taxes. There's the issue of trust. There's the issue of political will to do what needs to be done when they collect taxes. And yeah, I think this is something that would always be a bone of contention when it comes to Nigeria, and it seems for the rest of the continent as well, there are still similar challenges there.
Yeah, absolutely. Still on the issue of regulations, we're seeing Ghana joining a growing list of African nations in formalizing their stance on cryptocurrencies, and they want to start licensing crypto exchanges in September of this year, which is really cool because a few years ago we saw Ghana issue a warning against the use of crypto, and now they're actually acknowledging that there's a growing interest among consumers. And I think also they can see other countries begin to formalize. We've seen Nigeria do that, we've seen South Africa do that, and now Ghana is joining the list, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool because we are seeing countries that previously put the ban on cryptocurrency or facilitating cryptocurrency transactions now beginning to create regulation for that, which I think is the way to go about it. Yeah, Ghana is the latest country to join the list. And I believe it's cool because on this podcast, we've talked about stable coins becoming, more stable. And so we are seeing big players like MasterCard and Visa making a lot of inroads to try to increase stablecoin adoption, especially in Africa. So if you can't beat them, join them. Might as well create the regulation that makes it safe for people to trade these digital currencies rather than resisting, because when it comes to traditional financial systems, there are a lot of issues. We talk about cross-border payments issues in Africa. So if there is this other platform with cryptocurrencies that can help to solve some of these problems, why not create regulation around it? So it's a good move, and it would help to ensure that people trade cryptocurrencies in Ghana more safely.
Yeah, and one of the trends we've been talking about on this podcast lately has been regulation. And one of the biggest advantages of regulation is consumer protection. And I think we'll see a lot more of that, even with what Ghana is doing. We'll also see a lot of regulations on anti money laundering, which is very key in Africa, actually in the world at the moment. Money laundering is a big issue that we face. And so if you are a founder in these spaces, as you see more regulations coming up, you're going to have to invest either time or money in ensuring that you comply to the new regulations that are coming up.
Yeah. Moving from regulation to electric vehicles, BasiGo has launched Kenya's first electric matatu pilot for intercity routes. On the podcast, we have also discussed electric vehicles, and we are seeing some more inroads with this in Kenya. So this company called BasiGo has partnered with two companies, 4NTE Sacco and Manchester Travelers Coach Sacco, to basically create connections between cities with electric vehicles. What I like about this pilot program is that they didn't just think about the electric vans, but they also thought about something that electric vehicles lack at the moment: very long ranges. So if you're trying to connect cities through your electric vans, you have to think about how would they charge in between. And at the moment, that is currently a challenge for electric vehicles. So they have also thought about this, and they have set up charging stations along the routes that these vehicles will operate in. I think this is another move in line with what we've been seeing, where there's a growing adoption of electric vehicles, and it will definitely be helpful when it comes to green energy and how it affects our climate. So I like this move.
Yeah, it's a really good move. And majority of the places where electric vehicles are operating, it's within small distances within cities. So this is the first one that I'm seeing in Kenya and probably in other countries where they're taking longer routes. Nakuru, Nairobi is about 2 hours. Nakuru, Nyahururu is about 3 hours drive. So it's really interesting to be able to see this. One of the things I love the best about what BasiGo is doing is their business model. I think it's a very good business model because they have approached SACCOs. Now, those are like cooperative societies that own vehicles, fleets of vehicles already within certain routes. So they already have consumer trust. They have been in operation for years. Things like 4NT, I think, are older than I am. So they are people who have operated in specific routes for a very long time, and now they are partnering with them. I think that's a very smart business model as opposed to starting your own fleet and trying to get customers on it. They are leasing, they're doing a pay as you go leasing agreement with already existing SACCOs. And what are they doing? They're promising probably cost effectiveness, let me call it that. Cost effectiveness when it comes, because one of the biggest challenges that people in the transport industry face is fuel and the changes in prices. So they're giving them a more efficient way of doing that, which is really cool. And instead of going out and trying to find their own clients, they've come up with a strategy where they are partnering with businesses that already exist. And I think that's a very smart move. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it fares because I do think that it will be a successful move as opposed to people who come in with a new product and try to push market adoption afresh.
Yeah, you raise a good point with their business model there. We talked about another Kenyan startup a couple of weeks ago that was doing the same thing, going about establishing partnerships with players that have already been in the market for a long time. And that is a very safe way to enter the market. So we are seeing this play out here as well. Kudos to them. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Before we move to the next topic, the only thing I will say on a lighter note is taking 1.5 hours to charge a car is super long. So probably we need to come up with superchargers, the same way we did for telephones, something that can charge the car in 10
Yeah, I mean, the technology is still getting better. Tesla has made a move into Africa as well. And I think they are also like developing the fast charging technology at the moment. So we'll see with time it would get to that point that we are at with smartphones and laptops at the moment.
Yep, absolutely. And still on the topic of electric vehicles, we're seeing two trends here: electric vehicles and regulation. So Uganda has introduced a series of tax incentives that are aimed at accelerating the local assembly of electric motorcycles. Now, Uganda is known for having a very huge number of boda boda and motorcycles. In 2020, they had 1 million motorcycles in the country. So anyone who's visited Uganda will probably tell you that it's hectic. And now they are creating an environment where electric motorcycles can be assembled within the country at a cheaper rate. And I think this is a great way of how government can support innovation and growth within a country. And I think tax incentives is one of those ways.
Yes, tax incentives would definitely encourage anyone building electric vehicles in Africa to think about Uganda, because not paying taxes means you get to keep more of your money. And they are doing this for the first 5 years. That's enough time to build a company, establish a presence, and start to make some good revenue and maybe even profits within the country. So it's definitely a good move that Uganda is doing. What he said about Uganda having a huge motorcycle population, we'll call them Okadas in Nigeria, definitely means maybe it wouldn't be my favorite place because I'm not a big fan of motorcycles. But Uganda is definitely a country I would like to visit because we have talked about some of the moves that the government is making to foster innovation. So it's definitely a place I would like to see. But I guess I would have to get used to motorcycles if I if I'm making the trip. So we'll see how that goes.
You may also need to learn about their regulations. They are known to have some very controversial regulations at times. I remember a few years ago, it was illegal for women to wear short skirts and dresses in the country. So
Oh wow.
they are known to have some funny regulations, but that's story for another day.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. I'll need to do some more homework on them before I make that trip. Moving to AI, because of course we are in the era of AI. So Google is putting in $37 million in investments for developments in farms, so agriculture, and also for languages. So the one that does interest me is languages. There are a lot of languages that are beginning to get forgotten at the moment, and Google is trying to make these investments for people that are building solutions for agriculture as well as people that are enhancing access to local languages. Google is known for doing a lot of these big funds, a lot of these big scholarships. Part of it is that they have tools that they hope you would use to build these solutions. And that is another way of getting people to use their tools. But on the other hand, the effect is still the same regardless, right? There is the preservation of local languages, and you can always come back at a later time in the future and say, okay, this language was here, this is the language these people spoke. And I always like initiatives like that. I mean, that also plays on some of what we do with Startup Graveyard. Like these startups that shut down, we have put them into this place. Anyone can come and see what they try to do and also learn from them. So yeah, I like this initiative a lot and I look forward to what people build with this fund.
Yep, 100%. I was very skeptical at first when I saw that they were investing in agriculture and farming. I'm a bit skeptical lately when it comes to very big international companies trying to invest in African agriculture, because we are seeing in Kenya, for example, we have had quite a huge fight with the government trying to put in laws that stop us from using indigenous crops that we have, where you're able to replant the seed. And we're seeing a move by international companies try to sell us seeds that cannot be replanted, which makes you reliant on them to continuously sell seeds to you, as opposed to the way we've always farmed as Africans, where I plant and then I get seed from whatever I harvest. I have some seed left over to plant for the next season. So we're seeing a lot more crops that are coming up where you're not able to replant the seed, which is a dangerous thing if you ask me as a farmer, because I am one. However, looking at this, I was really interested in the fact that what they're doing is research, ensuring that they come up with tech that tackles hunger, climate related crop threats, which is really cool because I am in that space, and farming inefficiency. So how can we begin to create sustainable farming? So those are places that I'm really interested in, and I'm really happy to see this because it's quite a bit of money. $25 million in just farming is really good and a really good use of AI and technology.
It's funny that you talked about the conversation with, I believe, GMO crops that is currently going on. I didn't know that was also happening in Kenya at the moment, because that was a huge conversation online on Twitter over the last couple of days in Nigeria. So many people for and so many people against. I think a large majority are against the idea, because it's as you've said, we've always planted crops and gotten seeds that we would plant for the next harvest. And these GMO seeds would threaten that. I don't think our problem at the moment is GMO in the first place. I don't understand the problem that these seeds are solving that the local seeds don't already solve. And to top it off, we have, for example, in places like Nigeria, the main issue at the moment with farming is insecurity. There's the conflict with the herdsmen and local farmers. So that's the main issue at the moment with farming in Nigeria. So how does this GMO seed solve that? It doesn't. Does it also give them funding to be able to distribute their products? It doesn't. So again, it's not really solving a problem. Going back to what we are talking about, Google is a research-based company. They do a lot of research. So this fund is targeted at people doing research and solutions that will be based off this research. So I'm all up for it.
Yes, and still on AI, we're seeing a new AI being launched. It's called ArthurAI, and it's the brainchild of MindHive.ai and Tech Mindset Africa. And they're coming together to create an AI powered education platform. And they're working with Daystar University. So here's another example of startups partnering with organizations that have been there for a long time. So they're partnering with Daystar University. They're starting with a cohort of 10 people to pilot this new way of learning. And traditional learning has its merits, but it also has its shortcomings. In Kenya right now, we're seeing quite a big fight for education because we had a president previously who made primary education free. And now we're seeing the government at the moment trying to reverse that policy and going back to paid education. So the future of learning still has a lot of innovation that it requires. And I think this is an interesting way to start. And I'm looking forward to seeing how AI is going to run these learning hubs.
Yeah, it's a good way that they've tried to introduce this AI into the markets. They are going with a pilot program similar to one of the stories we talked about earlier with Daystar University. And what this immediately gives them is users, right? People that can actually test this thing they're building, and then they'll get feedback that is very valuable for whatever it is you're building. You need to get feedback from actual people. As bright an idea it is, you get feedback that maybe you didn't think of, maybe you would even add to your solution down the line, and you get a more refined product. So automatically they just get that from the beginning. And of course, we are always going to talk about AI. I think for the next couple of years, it would be a thing. AI this, AI that, and then at some point it will just become like Google, where you say, "Let me Google this." It will just become part of our everyday life and wouldn't be such a thing. But in the meantime, people need to get more education about how this technology would affect them, how it would affect their future, how it will affect their work. And so this is a good partnership, and we'll see what the results of this pilot program are down the line.
Yep. And it's always good to see Africa not just consuming AI, but building it. This is something I complained about earlier this year, and I'm really happy to see that more and more companies are coming into the game and making me, happy. This is my Jumia. AI developed in Africa.
All right, all right. Wrapping up, Kava is entering Africa's streaming markets with a Nollywood-first platform. Streaming is becoming more and more popular in Africa. Netflix and Amazon Prime, they are the big players. We have Showmax, that is the local player from MultiChoice. And Kava wants to enter this market because we've seen in the last year, I believe Netflix and Amazon Prime have slowed down from a production point of view, because previously they used to partner with Nollywood directors to produce movies, but we've seen them slow down in the last year. Maybe they haven't gotten the results they've wanted, so they are going back to the drawing board to re-strategize. And Kava has decided to make a move now that these players are slowing down. From what they have said so far, I'm not sure what their unique value proposition is that the existing platforms don't already have. They say they want it to be Nollywood first. We had Iroko in the past that was kind of like Nollywood first, but they also had Ghanaian movies. They had other African contents as well, but that didn't really work out well. So I'm not sure what the difference would be in this case, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I agree. I like the fact that it's African. Anything African, I am for 100%. I understand going Nollywood first because it is the largest filming industry in Africa. It's the biggest space when it comes to entertainment. Nollywood is it for Africa. But I also hope that, as they said, Nollywood first, I hope that they will open up their markets to more players. Ghana, although Ghana movies and Nigerian movies are very close, from an outsider's perspective, they look the same. Probably they're not from your perspective. Places like South Africa, Kenya, and other areas where movies are opening up. However, I will say this: while as a continent we are growing with regard to the kinds of entertainment and movies and music that we are creating, we are yet to get to the point of Hollywood. And I do think that what is mostly consumed on the continent is Hollywood, just because of the entertainment value. You're not going to be able to find a movie like Fast and Furious in the African continent yet. And I think that is one of the reasons why perhaps other African streaming businesses have not succeeded. And so I hope that while they start with Nollywood, they will also find a way to get licensing to showcase Hollywood movies, because even when you look at European movies, British movies, they're yet to get to the Hollywood level. So it's unfortunate, but it's just the truth that if you are going to have staying power, you're going to have to show those movies and that music, just because of their production value and the kind of movies that they produce are not being produced anywhere else in the world.
You make a good point there, because Hollywood is so massive and there's a lot of consumption of Hollywood movies. So you definitely need to get licenses for Hollywood movies, because it's like you said, the production value of Hollywood movies are just on another level. And I don't know when we would get that, because there's just a lot of money spent in creating Hollywood movies. We still have a very long way to go. Even Nollywood has a long way to go. Again, that's why I'm a bit more skeptical about the story. We do have Showmax, and Showmax has try to give Netflix and Amazon Prime some competition. So yeah, maybe another player in market to be good, but we'll see. We'll see. And that's a wrap for this episode. We would be taking a break for a week. So next week we won't have an episode, but we would be back from the upper week. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, drop them down in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Tech Tides Africa podcast. Remember, leave a comment or share with your friends. We'll see you next Thursday at the same time and place you get your podcast. Until then, stay well.